Next on Newsmax Prime, John Kerry now claims there's enough support among Senate Dems to see the Iran deal ratified. Ambassador James Woolsey assesses the impact and the implications. Then, the financial news chronicles the ups and downs on Wall Street. But what about the situation on your street? Personal finance expert Robert Kiyosaki offers his counsel on the economy. And the continuing search for so-called Nazi gold. Are riches from the Third Reich any closer to being uncovered? We'll talk about it. Newsmax Prime starts now. Good evening. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Newsmax Prime. I'm J.D. Hayworth. Of prime interest tonight, a done deal? As the Obama administration musters up the last vote it says it needs, this one from Maryland Senior Senator Barbara Mikulski, assuring the president that the deal will survive any congressional challenges. Is that going to hold? Miranda Kahn's been following the story all day and joins us now from our Newsmax Prime newsroom. Miranda?
JD, John Kerry reiterated the importance of getting this deal done as he spoke in Philadelphia this morning. The Secretary of State took to the stage shortly after the Democrats garnered up enough support to guarantee lawmakers can't pass measures that would block the deal.
It is clear that if we reject this plan, the multilateral sanctions regime will start to unravel. The pressure on Iran will lessen, and our negotiating leverage will diminish, if not disappear. Now, obviously, that is not the path, as some critics would have us believe, to a so-called better deal. It is a path to a much weaker position for the United States of America and to a much more dangerous Middle East.
Vice President Dick Cheney spoke to Newsmax TV earlier today. He says the danger he fears is another mass casualty attack, but worries this time the terrorists would use more dangerous weapons. He also questions the approach taken by the Obama administration.
The administration's approach to nuclear weapons in Iran, I think, is entirely misplaced. I think taking a regime that's the worst terror-sponsoring regime on the face of the earth, providing it with significant capability, lifting the embargo on missiles, lifting the embargo on conventional weapons, returning over $100 billion to them at a time that they also will be able to maintain their capacity to enrich uranium and pursue a nuclear weapon.
And you can see much more of the interview with former Vice President Dick Cheney and his daughter Liz tonight on the Hardline. That's starting at 9 o'clock Eastern Time tonight, as well as on the Steve Malzberg Show. That's at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, right here on Newsmax TV. While the majorities of both the GOP-controlled House and Senate are poised to vote against the agreement, supporters of the deal now have their sights set on that magic number 41. That's the number of votes needed to filibuster the bill and prevent it from getting to a final vote in the Senate. JD, back to you.
Thanks, Miranda. For more on this story, we're pleased to be joined now by Ambassador R. James Woolsey. He's the former Director of Central Intelligence, and currently he's the Chairman of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He joins us from Newsmax, New York, and Skyping in from Boca Raton, Florida, Dr. Peter Vincent Pry. He's the Executive Director of the Task Force on National and Homeland Security. Gentlemen, to you both, thanks for your time here on Newsmax Prime. Jim,
good to be with you, Jenny.
It is so good to have you both. If you could sit down, Jim, with members of the Senate, members of the House who have signed off on this deal, saying they're going to go along with President Obama, what would you tell them?
I tell them that the deal is worse than worthless. I completely agree with Vice President Cheney on this. Not only the vast amount of funds that are going to go into terrorism, but the fact that once Iran gets a nuclear weapon, and under this agreement it will, is only a question of speed of development. Then you are going to have nuclear weapons proliferate throughout the Middle East. The Arab states, such as Saudi Arabia, Egypt, others, are definitely going to end up with nuclear weapons. And so the next time we have a major Middle Eastern crisis, let's say, 5-10 years from now, you could well have 6 of the countries involved, let's say, having nuclear weapons. The Mideast is crazy enough without nuclear weapons, but I'm afraid, especially when you have a situation in Iran, such as was described by Bernard Lewis. He said in the Cold War, mutual assured destruction was a deterrent, but with the Iranians today, it's an inducement.
And Jim, for all of the above, for all of the aforementioned reasons, I understand you wrote a letter to the president along with 56 other experts asking him to reconsider. Do you expect any response from the White House to your letter?
No, not really. But I think the Senate could undo something, at least temporarily, that they did, I think, very wrong, which was to pass a bill which made it possible with 41 votes in the Senate for the president to get this approved. If they just gone with a straight constitutional submission of a treaty, the president would have needed 67 votes in the Senate. And I think it's not too late for them to do that. Now, everybody's going to yell at them, but the Constitution, I think, is really quite clear that something like this, and our historical practice has been quite clear, anything this major clearly ought to be a treaty and require 2/3 of the Senate in order to become law.
It is so unfortunate that some Republican members of the Senate basically short-circuited the Constitution. Speaking of short circuits, pardon the pun, Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, you joined Jim in writing an article for the Washington Times entitled "A Sharia-Approved Nuclear Attack." You talk about the specter of electromagnetic pulse, an EMP attack. Peter, could you tell us just how great a threat this is to the United States?
Well, it's an existential threat to our existence as a civilization. This would be the detonation of a single nuclear weapon. You only need one detonated at high altitude, basically at an altitude of about 300 kilometers over the center of the United States, and it will generate an EMP, which is like a super energetic radio wave that will destroy electronics, collapse the electric power grid. It's a way of basically destroying our electronic civilization. The Congressional EMP Commission in which I served estimated that a year-long blackout that would result from a nuclear EMP attack could kill up to 9 of 10 Americans through starvation, disease, and societal collapse. And we know it is why Iran wants the bomb. They've written about it in their military doctrine. They've been thinking for nearly 20 years about how to make an EMP attack, and they've done more than think about it. We've seen them actually exercise with their Shahab-3 medium-range missile and launching Scuds off a freighter to do an EMP attack in an anonymous way so they could keep their fingerprints off the attack and escape U.S. nuclear retaliation. It's why they want the bomb. It's why they can't be trusted. It's why this deal, if it goes forward, could be fatal to 90% of the American population. And
Gentlemen,
J.D., Peter's point about it being possible for it to be anonymous is really important, because deterrence requires that the entity, the government being deterred, know that they are the ones that launched a nuclear weapon, and so you may well retaliate against them. The problem, as Peter pointed out here, with this, one of the many problems with an EMP attack, is you may well be able to carry it out in such a way by putting the nuclear weapon in orbit so that the North Koreans or the Iranians could get away with it. And if the lights all go out, it may be the Iranians in a few years or months once they have a nuclear weapon, or it may be a solar event. You may not be sure who it is.
Well, when we have that kind of uncertainty, the only certainty is that the Congress of the United States and whomever is the commander-in-chief need to act. And thus far, Washington, despite my old Arizona colleague Trent Franks bringing to this to the fore time and time again, we've had the problems. Gentlemen, we appreciate your time. We'll have you back real soon. Still to come, Jeb Bush and Donald Trump continue their back and forth. Ford O'Connell and Franco Ripple on just who might emerge from this political scrum. And later, the hunt is on for an armored railway car that reportedly disappeared in Poland way back in 1945. Rabbi Abraham Cooper discusses the mystery of the so-called Nazi gold. But first, former House Majority Leader Tom DeLay discusses the latest on Hillary's emails and the surging surgeon, Dr. Ben Carson. All that and more when Newsmax Prime continues.